Monday, April 15th, 2019, special session of the Anamosa City Council at City Hall Council Chambers. 1.0 roll call.
Rich,
Here.
Kay,
Here.
John,
Here.
Ron,
Here.
Cody.
Here.
2.0 discussion and possible action on resolution adopting guidelines for small cell facilities, and it's a roll vote.
Well, gee, I certainly think it was wise to put some type of abandonment clause in on these, guidelines. We certainly don't want the city's right of way being cluttered with, obsolete services.
Yeah, I think that was a good addition as well.
So we'll see more of these in our community because of the fiber going in.
I don't know when these will come in our community. It could be a long time. They're primarily hitting the larger cities. I know they're like going into Dubuque and Iowa City, Cedar Rapids. They're probably already in Cedar Rapids.
Says they
But
connect.
they're gonna slowly filter their way into the smaller communities. The reason, again, the urgency is just, there was, the cell companies, were irritated, I guess, with going through the red tape of getting permission to put things in, and that's where the FCC basically said, if you're gonna put policies in place, they can only cover these certain areas. They can't, cover everything, and then they have to be in place by, by today. My understanding is we can amend these at a later date, but if we have nothing in place, then we may not have, might not be able to pass them in the future.
So is in a sense, the go-to, the pole-mounted structure or style, that's the point of preference?
That's my understanding, is that they're typically pole
Oh,
mounted.
yeah, you- And I assume since everybody's kind of gearing up for 5G is the reason why.
Yeah, this is kind of what drives that 5G technology, is my understanding anyway. I'm certainly not an expert on them, but, it's kind of a battle, cause the cell companies are saying this is a good thing, you need to support it, and nobody's saying we don't support it, it's just a matter of, there's other things to consider as well. And again, just making sure that we're trying to keep things, I think the picture in the email is just an example of, I think it's one of the more worse examples. This was a lot crammed on one pole, and you start getting that in certain districts anyway, and it can lower the appeal. I'll just send something right now, so everybody can see it.
Now trying to foresee here, will they try to gain access to current poles in place?
I imagine they probably will get something worked out.
I'm guessing they will try to target poles in place. And I think that's our preferred route as well. We don't want any more poles than we need. But if they, again,
So they would have to get a hold of a land
yeah.
to use their poles.
Does
Yep.
this change our building permit policy as far as what Penny looks at when people,
This wouldn't change the building permit.
cause like when people put cell phone towers, they have to have a permit. But
Correct.
this is,
This would be different because without this, they wouldn't require really any permit, and most cases, they're not gonna be digging in the right of way. I mean, there may be some ground mounted where they would need a right of way permit. But if they're just attaching it to a pole without this, they could just go directly to Alliant, put it on there.
The
and
structure's
it would
already
be
there.
none of our concern at that point, except I would say.
But they don't need a building permit to do
They wouldn't
it.
need a building permit.
Okay.
Under this, they would need a separate permit for the small cell device.
So we'll have to create a new, okay, that
Yes.
was my question.
So if they're hanging from, say, one of the Alliant poles,
Yep.
what kind of control does Alliant have or say in this process?
I think I don't know for sure. I think they have some discretion being as their poles. I think it's similar to us where they can't just say, no, you're not allowed on our poles, period. But they may say, this pole versus that pole, you have to follow these guidelines, sort of.
I mean, Alliant's already doing that with MediaCom and CenturyLink and
So
leasing
it doesn't
space.
interfere with their,
Well, either that or else all of a
Service.
sudden they're letting USL and Verizon and having 5 different things hanging. I mean, I don't know if they say, okay, that's enough, we're not doing any more, how's that going to translate or
And I'm not,
affect anything?
again, an expert on these by any means, but and this was crafted by an attorney for the city of Elkader that my understanding was also the city attorney for several other cities in the area, cause several were following this similar policy. I think similar to how when you're traveling,
Well, if that's across the street from me, I'm not gonna be happy.
similar to how you're traveling and you'll switch from your main carrier to another carrier because they're the primary in that area, I think it is capable so that like one cell carrier can share their small cell with others through agreements. And so there's language in here saying that we don't want more than one antenna within so many, linear feet, kind of forcing one carrier to share with the others so that they're not all putting their own up, and then you get 5 or 6 on one pole or in the same area even. I sent an email that has one, I think it's the same that I sent earlier, and then there's another example that's maybe a better example where it's covered up by the street banners, which doing our best to just camouflage it, I guess.
So, okay, so it goes on an existing pole,
Most likely,
most likely, how frequent? Because I'm thinking, if I look out my front door, there's one across the street, there's one at the end of the block this way, and one across the alley this way. So if they put these boxes on each of these poles, I could look out my door and see boxes.
Well, probably part of that's gonna depend on, let's just say if it's US Cellular, they're gonna know the radius that device is going to cover. So they're gonna make sure that radius is gonna overloop at some point, but just to make sure there's coverage, but they're gonna spread them out.
But what if
But-
Verizon does?
But then the problem is you get Verizon putting up USL and so forth, then that's where the dilemma comes in on all of these devices. But depending on how you do it, if you say there's only so many on a pole, and that's where maybe Alliant comes in, they say we only want one
Yeah.
pole, then they're gonna have a different radius service.
Right,
yeah. And I don't know the exact radius what that would be.
Well, it might depend on the device and the
Mhm.
power
Oh,
to it.
yeah.
and-
and what,
So-
which one it is.
yeah.
Well, and it'll depend on if you have, from what I understand, it connects to fiber. So it will also, that tower will be connected, or that,
Yeah, I think they
it will
are.
be connected to fiber. So if you don't have fiber in your neighborhood, you won't have any of them in your neighborhood.
Well, will those repeat to a central location, or are they all gonna run straight down the pole to fiber at that point?
I'm not sure on that. They may be all fiber connected, but I'm not sure.
I mean, cause it's possible maybe that they in turn send a signal to a, bounce back down to a certain central location maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that's, they could, I'm not sure. But,
But you said, basically, we've gotta enact this today, but we can
Change
amend it at a future date?
well, that's my understanding, and I primarily get that from the fact that, in the resolution, which again was drafted by the attorney who put together the guidelines, put in the third whereas, proposed small cell guidelines for the city of Anamosa, which as amended from time to time, if they were set in stone from this date forward, I don't think you would put that in your resolution, and that's kinda what I think. I mean, I'm sure there's still some topics we can't address under the FCC, ruling, but
So you
I
could
think
make it,
if we said, you know, and again, I did not set the permit amount, that is the permit amount that, El Cater was using, and at $270 a year, it's an ongoing cost, is the way they set it up.
so like, when you're talking about amending it, usually you can make it less restrictive, not more restrictive.
Well, I think if there was something where we could prove, say our cost was higher than that, I don't know, I don't anticipate that, but if we said our cost was higher and we needed to adjust our permit fee, I think you could increase the permit fee if you had to.
So that $270 a year that goes to the city?
Yeah.
Is that?
I mean, they
per-
would have to work out, they would, if they're gonna use the line towers, I'm sure they're paying to use those line
Yeah.
towers. That would be a separate cost for them.
But is that 270 per device or per
I believe that's per
Company.
device.
They'll pass the savings on to us.
Yeah.
Don't you
Exactly.
worry.
Like they do all the time?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I guess based on the understanding that we need to put the, in a sense, the base structure in place, with the ability to amend future as warranted, we've got to start using and adopting what another community has. It'd be very difficult for us to try to grasp everything that's gonna apply to this over the next even 5 years, let alone further out.
Right.
Well, and probably until they start actually putting them up,
Yeah, that's,
then we're gonna run into the problems, but it could be 5, 7, 10 years down the road before it
We don't-
happened, or it could be tomorrow,
Right.
so. Well, I'll make the motion to adopt this.
Second.
First by Rich, second by Cody to adopt the guidelines for small cell facilities as proposed by Jacob.
Roll vote?
And it's a roll vote.
John,
Yes.
Rod,
yes,
Cody,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Kay.
Yes.
Any further discussion?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. What took you so long?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you all for
Yeah.
adjusting your schedules.
So, since we're just